Hi, folks. It is great to see so many of you with us. We are just about 30 strong here, and that's really exciting to see. Thank you for joining us for the SHAPE Professional Development virtual opportunities to work towards gaining skills, talking about leadership, communication, and managing up in this one, as well as kind of a little break from monotony if you're getting a little stagnant in your shelter in place. And also we want to recognize for those students out there that you have had a lot of screen time, knowing that those online courses and shifting to is a lot. So what Rachel and I are committed to doing is switching it up for you, providing some different content, some that's related to the things that we're going through, and some that's not, that is just helpful skills and tips and tricks. And so that's what we're going to be covering today. As you'll notice, the offerings for the SHAPE Professional Development virtual experiences really do rotate. So you get 2 real workshops a week. You get an opportunity to connect with employees. You get a SHAPE workshop, which is what you're in right now. And then on Fridays, we've started instituting our Lunch with Leadership series, which was awesome. Our link to the one that we just did with Stephanie Morera is on our SHAPE YouTube channel. I uploaded it, and so those will be available if you missed it to rewatch, and you can count those for your asynchronous options and opportunities as well. This one, if everything goes according to plan, will also be on our SHAPE channel, as well as some different offerings. So just to expand those out, we will go ahead and get started. For those of you I haven't met yet, I'm Emily. I like to share my pronouns. They're she, her, and hers. I work in training and development in the Laurie Student Center and in SLICE with co-curricular leadership, along with the wonderful Rachel, who's going to be helping me moderate the chat bar. So if you have any questions, feel free to send them directly to her or to the overall chat bar, and Rachel will be monitoring that as we go. So without further ado, let's see if I can share my screen and get started. Go here first, click this off, whoop. Minimize. All right, great. So what it does for us is it gives us some different views. So I'm just going to make sure I can see as many of you as possible. So some of this will be familiar to folks who have been joining us. So I'm going to pop through it pretty quickly, but just to orient folks who haven't, Zoom is definitely a play with it and you get it better platform. So you made it to here. There are 2 views that you can look to. For these ones that are pretty content heavy, we encourage you go to speaker view. And as we are sharing our screens, that's what prominently will be taking it up. You can switch at the upper top right-hand corner of your screen. There's a toolbar or a tool ribbon at the bottom that has chat features, which is where you will get your information for breakout groups as we go, and anything. We really love it. We're going to ask you to be using that a couple times during this presentation to get your input, and so to get comfortable with putting out your ideas and your thoughts on the chat bar. So please get familiar with that. And as a participant, you can raise your hand, you can mute yourself, unmute yourself from there, and do voting. We are using all of today's in PowerPoint and the Zoom platform to minimize the electronics of this one, just to kind of keep it fresh. You will also use Mentimeter in other of the workshops. We are still, if you are in Colorado, sheltering in place. Hopefully you are getting out in the beautiful sun that we have this week. If you are somewhere else, we are hoping that you are healthy and safe where you are. And we know that the context of this situation that we're in is a learning experience enough. So this is an extra, an added bonus to provide time together, to provide learning and skill development, and an opportunity for you to clock in, and that there is an attendance at the end that we will encourage you to fill out very quickly afterwards, because we send those emails to your supervisors that you joined us for that. So for now, we will get started. Our outline for today is we're going to talk about leadership and managing up, what it really is. We're going to have you identify maybe a challenge that existed in a situation that you found yourself in, talk about some do's and don'ts, some considerations to think about. We're going to learn an acronym about managing up called CALM, and then we're going to end with you applying it to your personal situation. And then we'll end and do that application link. So last week in one of the webinars, one of the seminars and the workshops online, we asked the participants what leadership during this time looked like. So there was everything from being there to someone. I like that CALM is represented there also. It's doing your part. It's the little things. And when I hear that, it's really leading by example. I know that my family had a harder time of kind of getting the shelter in place regimens about it, and so because my partner and I were taking it really seriously, they were more likely to take it seriously. And really popular are communication, empathy, and responsibility. Seeing that come through is really important when we're thinking about what leadership looks like. During this time, we also think that leadership is through influence rather than position during this time, and we're going to talk about that as well. So I want you to go to that chat bar. I want you to type in a couple of thoughts. Just briefly, when we say the term or the skill managing up, what comes to mind? What are some thoughts? What are maybe some experiences? What are some key components? What are stories you've been told about the concept of managing up? We want to see those come through. We'll give a second for that. Great. Thanks, Jay. Yep, taking more responsibility than is perhaps put on us initially. Rising to the occasion, right? I hear initiative in that. Leading by example, absolutely, kind of looking, seeing hopefully how you behave might be how your superiors or your supervisors behave also. Let's get a couple more in there. Being a leader instead of a bystander, absolutely. So kind of taking that opportunity, and managing up is about showing up rather than telling. Yeah. More responsibility, holding a higher leadership position. Yeah, that's a really good aspect to it, right? We all have a job description if we're employees in the Laurie Student Center or at CSU, and what is going a little above and beyond, taking initiative even when it's not your responsibility. These are great. So I want you to sit with that. I want you to think of that, because it's funny, Rachel and I work a lot together, and I've had a perception of what managing up is. And when I was doing my research for this, this presentation, I feel like I learned that I had it all wrong. Or did I? So I think that's the question that I want to pose you all with, and I want you to help me answer that at the end. So what I thought managing up was, is a tool for employees to get what they need and want. So I want you to tell me at the end, as we are continuing to go through the content of today, was I right, was I wrong, or was I somewhere in the middle? So thinking of it as a tool to help the needs and wants of employees get what they need and want from their supervisors. So as we go through, we'll learn a little bit about it. Our first one, we're going to watch a clip from, actually, it's just a really long commercial for this woman's book, but we are going to watch the first part of it, where one of the executive coaches and corporate coaches talks about what managing up is. So let me make sure. Here, we're going to try this, and tell me if you can hear it. Maybe Jay or Kit can give me a thumbs up. Jenny, I see you too. Can you hear it? Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm going to stop share, and then I'm going to share computer sound.
While we've all heard about leadership and management for decades, there's a new type of management that more and more people are talking about these days, and that's managing up. In this brief video, we'll explore this concept and explain why you might be making a huge mistake if you're not managing up. Having spent more than 2 decades in and around the corporate workplace, I've definitely noticed a type of organizational caste system of sorts, with leaders at the top of the food chain and worker bees at the bottom. In many ways, it encourages a really unhealthy corporate ecosystem that reinforces an us versus them mentality where leaders and staff hold lots of misconceptions about one another and often fall victim to miscommunications, misunderstandings, and organizational dysfunction. What does this dynamic look like? Oftentimes, it looks like this. Staff view leaders as the chosen ones, perched at the top of the corporate ladder in the land of milk and honey. They're expected to be all-knowing, sophisticated, perfect decision makers. They're providing precise orders, simply waiting for their perfect plans to be executed. Leaders are expected to make the decisions, ask the questions, and demand results. Staff, meanwhile, are toiling in the bowels of the organization, flawed and sometimes clueless, simply waiting for leaders to tell them what to do. Staff are expected to execute the leader's wishes, keeping their head down and work hard without asking questions or challenging the system. The problem is that these stereotypes are not just inaccurate, but dangerous. Here's an example of what happens in so many corporate workplaces. Meet Bob. He's a project manager working for a large company. He's a hard worker, comes in on time, and doesn't make waves. He doesn't believe in managing up. He heard something about it years ago, but decided that it was a recipe for disaster and opted to continue to just fly below the radar, do just what he's told, and not ask questions. He also maintains the same disposition and work style with every boss he has. After all, consistency is good, right? So when his new boss, Ann, asked for an assessment of potential knowledge management applications that the organization might consider purchasing, he gathered some pricing data and emailed her a report within a week. Now meet Linda. She's a project manager working for the same company. She's another hard worker, but she's also a believer in managing up. She's often commented that managing up is that skill that is rarely taught but can have a huge impact on your career trajectory, your stress level, and sometimes even your sanity. When Linda first started working for Ann, she took some time to determine some of her preferences, then she adjusted her work style a bit to better accommodate those. So when Ann asked her to assess potential knowledge management applications late in the day on Friday, she asked her if she could get some time on her calendar Tuesday morning to check in with her on the request. Linda knew that Ann was a morning person and seemed to respond better earlier in the day. She also wanted to ask some key questions to better understand her long-term goals, for example, why she was interested in a new knowledge management system, so she could be sure to gather the most relevant information, whether it be security features, bandwidth, storage, scalability, and so on. Once she confirmed when she needed the assessment, Linda scheduled some time on her calendar to walk her through the document in person. Why? Because Ann had told her months earlier that she really detested email and preferred face-to-face interaction. And another thing, in the report, she not only provided her the application assessment she requested, but she also provided some additional non-software specific ideas about how to enhance knowledge management within the organization, just for her consideration. Linda was managing up, and Ann wished everyone else on the team were more like her. So what is managing up?
All right. So I'm going to work on the quickness of sharing my screen. Click that off. Come in here. Okay, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Great, okay. Uh, so I like to say that there are always imperfect tools. There are definitely some things that I don't like about this video. I think that there are some stereotypes that continue on. We're going to talk about how socialization, specifically around gender and race, can really come up in this conversation. And so we're going to talk about that in terms of consideration. But the premise really does kind of land itself to we all find ourselves in working relationships where there is power involved, right? And I think when you're talking about supervision, and we can talk about this in terms of other relationships also. I think relationships with instructors, even relationship within family, understanding how it can move from our understanding of a power construct, which is more grounded in authority, dictatorial in nature, kind of top down, right? We all recognize that whether we want them to exist or not, we operate within many hierarchies around us, right? There's power playing all the time. If you went to the real workshop yesterday, we talked about social identities and how power can sometimes be associated with our social identities, as well as within a very formal structure of a hierarchy. Our university has a hierarchy, right? We know and we can feel that, and it's hard when we can't name that. So when we shift from our understanding, when we're looking at a supervisory relationship as a power construct to a relational construct, in power relationships, or when we're only thinking about power, we often feel powerless and without agency, and that everything is being done to us. When we start to understand these relationships as a relational construct, that there is agency and choice and decisions, that you all have influence in those relationships and how you move through them. It's not just about the things that happen to us, it's about what we do with them and how we respond, how we react, how we approach, and all of those things. If you're unclear or uncertain, what does asking questions look like? Do you feel like you can? Do you feel like you have agency in this? And so that's what we're going to start talking about in some of the do's and don'ts of managing up. So we're really talking about it within the framework of a relationship of supervisory and supervision, because many of you work at the university. That's why you've come to the SHAPE professional development. So each of you probably has a supervisor, some who may pay you a lot of attention and a lot of mind, and you have weekly one-on-ones, and it's great. Others, they might have given you a task, a job description, said figure it out and move on, and you could be frustrated with that. So this content is going to talk about how you really can utilize some of these pieces. Before that, I want to read out this quote that goes along that says, leadership in the 21st century is more about influence than authority. Learning how to appreciate and adapt to people with different perspectives, identities, priorities, and experiences is a skill to be developed. The skill that needs to be developed, I believe, is leadership in itself. We can lead our leaders, we can lead our managers, we can adapt these skills and change direction. And I believe that good leadership is not having the same approach for everyone. It's equitable. It's learning about someone and figuring out how you work best together. And as supervisees, we have the opportunity to do that with our supervisors. But first, I want you to go into a breakout room. I'll put this in the chat bar, but I want you to think of a situation in your past, or it could be in your present, remembering that some of this might feel charged, and if you're uncomfortable kind of sharing about what a current situation is, that's okay. You'll be in smaller groups, and so we ask that you recognize those as story sharing spaces that we're getting to learn. There are only going to be 3 people in this room for a connection point and sake of time. So I want you to think of a situation that could have been different, an instructor or supervisor you had where there might have been tension or confusion, conflict, or misunderstandings. So we'll go into these small groups and share a little bit about that experience. I want you just to introduce yourself, who you are, and then what some of this concept could be. It could be, I'm not going to give you any more. I think you all can figure it out. So I'm going to stop sharing and break you up into these rooms. Where did my breakout rooms go? There we go. Okay. So there's going to be 2 to 3 people in each room, and we're only going to give you about 3 minutes to do this. It'll give you a 30-second countdown at the end. And so again, the prompts are in the group chat. So I'm going to open them now, and we'll see you in about 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, so folks are coming back from the breakout rooms. We know that wasn't too much time, but hopefully you will go back with those few folks at the end to talk about that experience and how some of the things that we're going to learn will hopefully be applicable to that or future experiences to that. So I'm going to go back to share my screen. All right. So we just came back in from breakout rooms where we asked you to think about an experience that might have been a bit challenging. There might have been some misconceptions. And so now we're really going to talk about what, there we go. That's the breakout room that we're doing. And so now we're going to talk about this concept of what is managing up. So what is it, right? You learned a little bit about it, kind of gave an experience from it, from the video that you watched. But from a variety of research that I did on it, an agreed upon definition was this concept of a method of career development that's based on consciously working for the mutual benefit of yourself and your boss. We know that we get things done. We enjoy work better when we are in situations that we appreciate the relationships that we're in. This doesn't mean that you need to share your personal, intimate details with everyone, but having some camaraderie, a trust built, respect, and how you can do that and how you can know to have agency to be able to help shape some of that relationship, however much capacity your supervisor or manager has. So when we think about what is a case for managing up, thinking about the benefits and the barriers, some of the challenges that might exist. When we think about this, the benefits are a happier work environment, right? A more enjoyable space to want to be. Building respect and confidence both ways. That you'll notice that when there is a reach out, a desire to do a little bit more, some initiative, have some asks, that there is a built respect and confidence. When you're there and you make the offers that you can, I want you to consider and think about capacity in this time, and we'll talk about how identities kind of play into this. But when you are at the willing or at the ready, those things are kind of tallied and ticked in folks' mind. So it encourages supervisors and managers to keep you in the know. It encourages a relationship that is reciprocal, that is both ways, and it works well towards the future. I always tell students who are asking for recommendation letters, if you make the specific to say, are you willing to give me a positive recommendation letter? And I joke a little bit about that, but everyone can give a recommendation letter, but it's what type of recommendation they're giving, right? What have been the experiences? Is there anything that might keep them from giving you a positive recommendation? I know from writing many of them that some it's just kind of human nature that you put a lot of energy and effort into some, and some we have some templates and we absolutely will do it. But what are those things that are encouraging the relationship to have been built? Now, some of the barriers that do exist for managing up are as follows: that there's ego involved. I know that I've been in a situation where I'm like, I can't believe they're doing this. I don't know why this decision was made, and we have a need to be right. We all see things through our lenses, through our experiences, through our identities. And it's really easy to not take pause and try to see it in an empathetic view. Remember that empathy and communication were two of the top skills and characteristics demonstrated around leadership. To pause in an empathetic way and say, I wonder what else is going on. Because we have this fixed perspective, which is the second barrier. We have a fixed perspective that prevents us from exploring alternative options, possibly the workarounds, possibly the creative ways that resources can be utilized, and say, well, I wonder if this would work. I work with folks a lot who are downtrodden and frustrated because they feel like they give these opportunities to their supervisors and it's just not heeded, it's just not heard, or they're just going to keep moving forward. Some of that you can manage and some of it you can't, but hopefully some of these skills will teach you how to. And then finally, that resistance to change. I laugh a little bit because we have all gone through so much change right now. We have gone through a lot of transition. And ultimately, human nature, we like to keep on the path that we know. Managing up requires us to shift and change our approach, depending on the characteristics of the folks that we're working with. So now you're like, okay, cool, you've made this case, we've watched this video, I'm all frustrated because I remembered this situation that was challenging for me. So what do you do? What does this look like? What is managing up? What do you do? The first thing is to get to know your boss, to get to know your supervisor a little bit. And I'm talking about in terms of communication style, in terms of timeliness. Are they someone that says, I want this Tuesday morning, but really they mean Monday night? And figuring out how you can have conversations around that is important. Past experiences to avoid. We all are informed by our own experiences, right? They are too. And so if they have had trust issues in their experiences before, you're going to have to work, and it's unfair. I'm not saying that this is fair. You're going to have to work a little differently or harder to build up some of that trust that might have been broken by someone before you. And again, it's not fair, and it's sometimes situations or perspectives of these relationships. Anticipate and jump in. So this goes to that anticipation, that offering to help. When I say situational awareness, that's something that we train on in medical situations, in emergency rescue situations, but it's figuring out the lay of the land. One of the critiques, fair or not fair, of some of our generations that I'm into, right, our millennials, our Gen Zers, is that there's so much of kind of a independent focus and individualism that says, this is my work, this is what I need to do, and kind of a lack of awareness around us. Now, I don't believe that's a fair assertion on our generation. I think that if we can practice kind of what is going on, identify within boundaries and reason what we're capable of doing, that there can be offers to help. That we can say, oh, we know this project is coming up. This is a really busy time for folks. I don't have a lot of tests this week. How can I take on a little bit more so that there is this reciprocity? And that could be with coworkers as well as it is with supervisors, right? Imagine the bigger picture. So again, that kind of broadening of perspective and moving away from this fixed perspective of what can be. And communicate expectations. I can't stress this enough. It is very hard to hold people accountable when the expectations have not been set forth in the beginning. So if you are in the middle of a job, we're all in a time of transition, this is a great time to invite a conversation with your supervisor around what are expectations for now. Say, I'm a little hazy, or I'd really love to get on the same page. What are the expectations so that you know that those and that is what is going to be accountable, or what you'll be accountable to moving forward. So these are all opportunities where you can invite. I really like that word, invite. Invite to get to know communication styles. Invite more help when is needed. Invite other perspectives and invite expectations to come into the conversation. Pay attention. That really goes onto that situational awareness. Pay attention around you. So the don'ts I want to quickly acknowledge. Don't try to manipulate. Sometimes managing up gets a bad rap. It is a really necessary skill. And sometimes what it can look like is sucking up or giving ingenuine compliments, right? If I were in a workspace with my boss and I was like, oh my gosh, and every time I just gushed over them, that would feel disingenuous, right? Flattering your boss or presenting things as overly good. Oh, we've got that handled. There's nothing, no challenges. Don't you worry about anything. If you can confidently say that, that's one thing, but this painting an overly rosy picture is going to lead to dis or mistrust. Another don't is to cover anything up, to own it quickly. We know that mistakes happen. We know that accountability will be made, and if there is frustration, that's okay, but you're working together to move through it. So trying to cover things up, I have to admit that I've done this in the past. I didn't want to tell my boss that something had, I messed up mail merge this one time and sent an email out to like 2,000 people that I wasn't supposed to send. It was a mess. I know, I see Rachel being like, oh no, yeah, that happened. Because I've had that mistake, I definitely have empathy for folks who have challenges with technology, but I owned it quickly, even though I wanted to hide it. And my supervisor at the time was incredibly empathetic with me. I know that that's not always going to be the case, but it's better when you own up to things quickly and manage the situation so you're on the offensive as opposed to the defensive, right? Get involved with workplace politics. There are politics all over, and we know when we hear the word politics, we're thinking of Democrats, independents, Republicans, debates on stage. There are politics of relationships. There is power exchanges that happen all the time, and you will find and feel this. You probably already do in some aspects in your work environment in the Laurie Student Center or at CSU. And so what are some of those politics, and how can you stay an arm's length away? How can you be involved, pay attention, have that situational awareness, but not get involved in the humdrum of the gossip and the frustration? Before we watch another clip and go back into breakout rooms, I want to acknowledge something that I didn't find as much in the literature, but is really important to recognize. These aspects to consider need to be lenses that we look through as well. Our identities play into this. My need as someone who has been socialized around femininity and a helper and a yes person and a doer and a jump when they say how, and if they say jump, I say how high. I have to recognize where my boundaries are. I have to recognize that this is something that I can be aware of and that I can help. Conversely, if you're someone who's been socialized to just do your work, just kind of keep your head down, do the best you can, keep consistent, those might be stories that you've been told about work. When we talk about socialization, these are stories and messages we've received along the way about what a good work ethic is, or what a good employee or a good environment are. And so to acknowledge those and to recognize that these are stories we've been told, we can either affirm them for how we want to move forward, or we can challenge them. And oftentimes we need to challenge them. So while we're not going to get too deep into our identities and how we've been socialized, they are things that throughout the SHAPE virtual professional development experiences we'll keep talking about as we start to understand how we've been socialized, what our stories are, and really what's authentic to you. I'm making suggestions about ways that you can pay attention around you, and if that's all you do, that's a step in the right direction. We don't want you to be inauthentic in terms of taking on more, or in terms of overly communicating when you wouldn't. And there are ways to do and go about this that are authentic to you. I have a friend who works in corporate right now. She's actually a trainer as well. And she is someone who does hard work. She gets her things done. She has sets expectations and was feeling really frustrated that people who were all buddy-buddy with the boss was getting more attention and more accolades. She felt that that was unfair. And so she needed to figure out an authentic way for herself to engage and get to know her boss and what she needed to do without being untrue to who she was. So she still wasn't going to go out for unnecessarily happy hours. She wanted to go home and be with her family. And that's really understandable, right? We all have those things that pull us away. But not that pull us away, but that we make decisions that we have other priorities in our life other than just work. And having conversations and getting to know a little bit, which we're going to talk about in the acronym CALM, was an authentic way that she could figure out how to get in a relationship with her boss that felt authentic to both of them. What is your work style? Think about that. Think about the work style juxtaposed, and if you're complementary to the people that you work around, or if there are tensions because they're very similar or very different. And then what do you want and need to be successful and satisfied in your work? If you ask that question, there's a lot of existing that goes on in our work environments, a lot of lack of reflection and asking ourselves, what do we need and want in our work environments, in our work relationships, to feel satisfied, to feel successful, that it is more about a paycheck. And when it's more than a paycheck, it provides a happier work environment for everyone involved. So at this point, I see that maybe a chat has come in. I'm gonna turn us over, and I want to have us watch just a couple minute clip of, again, it's going to move more into the like, well, how do I remember what to do and what don't I do? So this clip is going to talk about the acronym CALM as presented to us by an author, coach, and speaker, Lynn Taylor. Let me see if I can do this. Stop sharing for just a second to make sure that I have the video on again. Share computer sound, great. This, okay.
So many people ask me, well, what is managing up to you? Managing up is being a real problem solver with your boss, looking at the big picture, being the voice of reason, to show the pros and cons, to show rationale, use humor. I have a favorite acronym I use, which is CALM. Of course, that's to remind you that don't fall into the chaotic mode. CALM stands for C, communicate frequently, honestly, and openly with your boss, and know how they like to communicate, because everyone likes to communicate in a different way. Some people like texts, some like emails, in-person meetings, or even IM. A stands for anticipate. You know, some people, they just run down the hall because they see the boss and it's 11:30 and it's time for lunch, and your boss can be cranky. We all can be cranky. So timing is important, and anticipate when is a good time to talk and communicate. The L is for laughter. Who can't use a few jokes here and there? And it especially works in the office to break those tension barriers. M is for manage up. Manage up, again, is solving problems for your boss. But it's also about setting limits. You know, if your son Johnny wants to go on a play date to the zoo and have pizza all in the next hour, you're going to have to say, I'm sorry, Johnny, but we're going to have to pick one of those. And that's very much what it is in the office. You're going to have to tell your boss at times, well, I can do that, but this will be affected. So setting mutual expectations with your boss is critical.
Okay, so I really, again, like that acronym because it's helpful to remember the CALM, right? Again, to release the chaos of things, but to communicate, to anticipate, to laugh a little. And again, I want to stress authenticity, that if you're not necessarily a person who does funny naturally, or that feels kind of weird. Dry humor is appreciated, but it can be teased out, right? So that's the one of this acronym that I'm like, I'd like to explore that a little bit more. So for you to explore that, for me, I try to answer as many emails with memes as I can. I think that it just adds, if a meme can say it better than I can, it provides a different levity to a situation, and really kind of makes intergenerational workspaces appreciated. I have a colleague now who has requested the memes from me just to brighten up their day, and especially during this time in shelter in place, that feels pretty important. So what we want you to do now is go back into your breakout rooms for about 6 or 7 minutes. I want you to think about how you could use the acronym CALM while also considering the aspects we discussed. So reminders is that it's communicate, anticipate, laugh, and manage expectations, as we talked about in the do's. And then those aspects are around identities, authenticity, work style, and your needs and wants. So I'm going to put us back into the breakout rooms really quickly. I see, are there, oh, nice. Rachel's on it. See, look at this. Oh, so appreciated. So she's got some. I'm going to put some in the chat box too. And I'm going to move you into your breakout rooms. And hopefully, if I've done this correctly, they're the same ones. All right, we'll see you in a bit. Hi. So as we're coming back, would love to hear, maybe in the chat bar, a couple things that you all talked about. Just a few maybe things that are resonating with you, or ways that you felt you could utilize the communication, anticipate, laugh, and manage up. Maybe some tips that would help the other folks in the 9 other breakout rooms, since not everyone was together. So I'll wait kind of for a second. We give you those opportunities. It's funny because I'll just tell you a little bit about the facilitating on Zoom, which I've learned. It gives you the opportunity to drop into breakout rooms, and there's so much of me that wants to like pop in on you and be like, hi, what are you talking about? Because it's so silent on my end, and hopefully you all are talking to each other. So thinking about the communicate and anticipate, manage, and laughter with those situations that you found before to be somewhat frustrating, could some of these skills or suggestions have been helpful? Just looking for 2 to 3.
I definitely think that the laughter and humor in the workplace part is really important, you know, kind of bringing down tension and just having more of that relational kind of connection that pushes away from that us versus them. If you're able to, you know, joke and have a good time, and, you know, things get stressful, and if everyone can laugh about it, you know, I feel like you're more productive in handling those situations.
Yeah, definitely. There is a power in humor and kind of like breaking that tension. And again, that is a skill to be finessed. I would argue that collegiate time and place is a good place to try to finesse those skills, because the risk might not be as high, right? So, but it is. Thanks, Kit, for coming in. Maybe 2 others come off mute. I've really appreciated that.
I think one of the things we talked about I really loved was like challenging. So some of the aspects to consider was like something like stories you've been told about work, or probably definitely identities and socialization too. And there could be almost certainly, I have already experienced it in some workplaces, where there's like pushback when you show up in a space and you challenge those things about stories you've been told about work, and sometimes you get pushed back by people who use what we talked about at the beginning, like the power and authority type of leadership style. And that's why it's so important that you actually get to know your boss, especially in terms of the communication style, and definitely communicating frequently, because once the relationship is built, then there's more respect there. And something that Bilarab talked about. I don't know. Correct me if I said that wrong, Bilarab. But he said respect is super important. And yeah, that's huge, because if you can mutually respect each other, then they'll be able to be more of an understanding on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and then hopefully there can be even that basis. There's like a foundation that's already set for laughter, where like, because you're on a understanding level, you're already on a civil level where things can stay lighthearted,
Mm-hmm.
because you know that even though things might get tense, you still have the relationship that's already built.
Adam, thanks so much for that. Yeah, I think you bring up so many good points about the learning about each other, because really that's how we break down barriers. And there are stories that we've been told, and how you challenge and how you approach, especially when you're in a new environment, really does matter. And I'd love to kind of keep diving into that topic and conversation as we continue on some of these Shape virtual workshops. So, we're gathering back the final takeaways, and I want to know, do you think my thinking was right? Do you feel like this is a powerful tool for employees to use to get what they need and want? What do you think? Oh, I'm seeing a thumbs up. Awesome. Use some of those votes. How'd you do that? Oh, Jenny's got a thumbs up too. Yes, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Some people are seeing yes. So thinking about the tools that you've learned, some of the don'ts, some of the do's. I love these thumbs up. Utilizing managing up as a powerful tool for you as employees to get your needs and wants addressed. So think about that as we're continuing on. These are some resources. We'll send this PowerPoint out to you afterwards in a PDF form. And again, nope, I don't want to do that. The links really do go to the resources, as you've seen though. And I'm going to put the attendance link in the chat bar to record that you did. Rachel did it as well. We are grateful for you. We'll keep the line open for a little bit longer, and really are grateful that you joined us today, and hope you'll be with us tomorrow while we have an open conversation with our employees tomorrow at, I think it's 11. Yeah, have a great day. Stick around for questions, and I'm going to stop the recording now. Bye, everyone. If you can come off mute before you say bye, it would be awesome to know that you're there.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
folks.
Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.